You are listening to Christian America Ministries Worldwide, a weekly shortwave radio program and online podcast dedicated to uncensored, politically incorrect biblical teaching. Each week, your host, Matthew Dyer, and a guest discuss an important topic and shed the light of Scripture upon it. To learn more about Christian America Ministries, visit our website, christianamericaministries.org. And now the broadcast.
Greetings in the blessed holy name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you for listening to Christian America Ministries Worldwide. I'm your host, Matthew Dyer, and we're broadcasting around the world this evening on shortwave radio and over the internet on YouTube and Spotify and TuneIn. You can go to our website, christianamericaministries.org, if you would like to learn more information and on what frequencies we are broadcasting on shortwave. If you are listening to us on shortwave radio, we'd love to hear from you. You can send in a reception report at christianamericaministries.org. Go to our contact page and let us know how and where you're listening. We appreciate those reception reports. And if you do that, give us your address and we'll send you a free copy of my book, Is Jesus God or a God?, which is a scriptural defense of the deity of Christ. Just a little thank you for taking the time to let us know how you're listening. In this broadcast, I have a guest with me on the line, and we're going to be talking about, his testimony and the story that he has to tell us about a persecution that he had in his life. The guest I have on the line is Pastor Everett Ramsey, and he's going to be giving us his testimony and story of how he was thrown into jail for, basically, he's going to tell you here, for having a Christian school and not doing what the government told him to do with the program that they wanted him to do. So, Pastor Ramsey, thank you for coming on the program, and I appreciate you taking the time to tell us your story.
Oh, glad to do it. Appreciate you having me on, and hopefully your listeners will hear things of interest plus learn some things.
Well, I think they will. Real quick, before we get started, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and then tell us your story about what happened, how you got thrown in jail.
All right. Well, I was born in Oklahoma in 1939, and my mother died, and my father was older, and he couldn't take care of a couple of boys, and so an aunt and uncle in Missouri adopted us. That's another story we'll talk about sometime, but he was a wealthy man, but he wasn't a Christian, and in fact, he hated Christianity, period. But anyway, that, as I say, that's another story. I grew up here. I graduated from high school in the Ozarks, and I went to State College to study business, and I had surrendered to preach at the age of 16, and I had a full-paid scholarship to one of Southern Baptist state colleges here in Missouri, but it had a reputation for being liberal, so I didn't accept it, and I went to work in the feed and food industry, in laboratory work, chemistry, and that kind of thing, and wound up in St. Louis. And when I graduated from high school in May of 1957, I married my sweetheart, and she became my wife, and we had two children. And when our children were old enough to go to school, we had a hard time. We put them in the public school, but we found out that today's public schools are actually incubators for communism. Mm-hmm. And socialism, and we couldn't live with that. So we were called to a pastorate in Nebraska, near Omaha, between Omaha and Lincoln, a little town called Louisville, same as Louisville down in Kentucky, but it's Louisville up in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And the church, first meeting that I was there, they had 17 people, and 4 of those were my family. And we, at that point, we were playing instruments and singing, and it was a kind of a godsend to the people. They called me to be their pastor. And so in 1979, we opened a Christian school, not at my will. My children at this point had graduated from Christian school, and they were in college, Bible college. And so the people in the church were concerned about their children in the public school in Louisville and in Nebraska. And one of the parents had gone to the school and asked to take a look at the textbooks that his children were studying, and the superintendent of the school said, "That's not possible. We don't allow parents to come in here and look at the textbooks." And that made him angry. And they came to me and said, "Can we start a Christian school, and can we get out from under the state?" And I said, "Well, in this state, they have a law that says they're going to run everything. They run church schools, home schools, private schools, whatever, everything." And they said, "Well, we don't want that." So I said, "Well, we'll go down and work with the legislature this year, try to get the law changed, and we'll pray about it." And people found out we were going to do it. More and more people came, and more and more people were interested. So in 1979, we opened up our school. We got a visit from the state and said they were going to take us to court. At this point, we decided to make it stick, that we were going to go with it. And the parents said, "We're willing to go to jail if that's what it takes." Mm-hmm. And many of them did go to jail. Not only me, but many of the parents went to jail. But the long story is that it took about 5 years and $6 million in legal fees, which were people Christian around the country paid for us. They sent it to us to carry on the battle. And it attracted many, many Christians who had been waiting and looking for a church where they stand against government abuse of children and families and taxes, anything, any kind of thing that people are upset about with the government. So our church grew rather rapidly. We built a new building, started the school, and our students was tested by the same man who was hired by the state of Nebraska to test their students. He testified that our students were 3 years ahead of the state in all subject matter.
Oh, wow.
And the judge threw it out and said, "This is not about education. This is about law and control." So when school, I was on what they call contempt of court. Because every time I'd go back to church, I'd say, "Well, they said we got to close the school. You want to close the school?" Nobody voted for it. So we kept it running. And so I would have to go back to jail, and the elders would go back to jail. And when we were out of school, we were out. So eventually, President Reagan got involved, and people of importance around the country. And the governor and the attorney general, the prosecutors, the sheriff, all the people who were giving us problems, we had held a court of divine justice with imprecatory prayers, and all of them were removed from office. One of them died. One went to prison. One lost his license. There was just lots of things that happened, and the law was changed in 1984, and everything was fine. The thing we learned about it, there are a lot of funny things that happened, and I do have a CD that if people want to hear the 2-hour story, I preached in 800 churches in 1979 through 86 in America, and I preached in Canada and some of the Caribbean areas. But
oh, wow.
The law was changed, so we had the victory, and everything worked out fine, except some of the parents had lost their jobs, and Jerry Falwell got involved. He was going to raise money for them. That's another story. I hate to bring in all these stories because in a 2-hour sermon I can go through it all slowly and
I understand.
But I think it's important for the people that are listening to know that most of the Christians in Nebraska did not stand with us, most of the churches. The Lutheran churches didn't stand with us. Even some of the Baptist churches didn't stand with us. One of the Baptist churches in Omaha, the pastor called me, and I went up to his church. He wanted to talk to me, and he said, look, he said, we have a Christian school, and we run with the state license. And I said, well, show me around. So he showed me around, and I came in this classroom where there was a large area of books that were all covered up with sheets, and the signs on them that said, these cannot be used. And I said, what are these? And he said, well, those are the books the state requires us to have, but we can't use them, so we cover them up because they're not Christian. And and when they come to inspect, we take the covers off and tell them we got them. So I said, well, if you're asking me to be a hypocrite like that, I'm not interested. And he wasn't very happy about that, but that's what it is. He's being a hypocrite. And we have to take a stand somewhere on the issues, or we're going to be buried in America, and we are being buried. So, but anyway, once the battle was over, more preaching was in, and I finally resigned the church because I couldn't handle all of the travel and all of the speaking and preaching and pastor the church. So I love pastoring, and I really would prefer that. But my counselors at that point suggested and believed that the country needed to hear the story. And we told them a lot of the things. For instance, like Nebraska was the first state in the Union where the people who were heading up what I call satanic education, they passed the first law to attend school in Nebraska. And they passed the first mandatory law that every child has to go to school, a state-approved school. They passed that in Nebraska. And so it clarified in my mind why the Lord chose Nebraska for a place where we would take a stand, because the first domino had to go. The one that brought it in had to turn it loose. And when we were going through our battle, there were at least 8 or 10 states in the Union that did not have mandatory licensing laws. The rest of them did, and 8 or 10 of them were trying to get more laws of binding power to go after these Christian schools. They wanted to put us out of business. And one of the things, the media of Nebraska hated me, so they really twisted up a lot of the news and different things that I would give them. They would come out and interview me, and eventually, I'm not a Jerry Falwell fan, but I will say this: he knows how to handle the media. So he came out and he said, "Pastor, you got to quit talking to the media unless it is in-house in a live show, so they can't edit it." Yeah. And so I gave notice to all the news media. I said, I won't be giving any more interviews unless you want to do it live in your studios. Well, they really put the pressure on me in the heat, but I didn't. And so eventually, one of the senators in Nebraska that was really after us, they had him on, and they wanted me to be on the same show with him. And I said, sure, if it's a live show, I'll do it. And the thing that impressed me about this whole show was the interviewer asked the senator, look, they've tested the students, they're 3 years ahead of the state, what are you concerned about? And he said, well, in the year 2000, we're going to have a new world order, and these children won't fit in. And I said, well, that's really admitting to the gobbledygook that we know we're having to put up with. Mm-hmm. And I said, the interviewer asked me, well, what do you think about that? I said, well, I would have him know that in the year 2000, the Lord may put in a new world order, and he may not fit in. You know? And a lot of people enjoy my humor, but some people don't. So I do it when I'm preaching, but I don't do it much at any time else. But anyway, the church, the school grew. We did it very economically. our church was about 250, 300 people at the time, and we had students from K through 12, about 45 students, and we used ACE. We used ACE, Accelerated Christian Education, for several reasons. Number one is that I think it's very good. I know the people behind it, and I know what's put into it, and it's a Christian curriculum, and you get the true history of America, and you get the true gospel and all of those things. But we also did it because it could be run by a small church. Right here where I live now, I'm really burdened about Christian school. But in Houston, Missouri, there's 2,000 people here, and there have been 4 churches since I've been back home here. There's 4 churches that have started Christian schools, and they've all failed because they can't get people to pay the tuition that we can afford state certified teachers. That's what they want to do. So they want to be recognized by the state, so they start a school, and they have to hire. Then the curriculum has to pretty well match the schools. Yeah. Well, if you're going to put a teacher in that's going to stand in front of a class of 2 or 3 students and teach them science or teach them geography or teach them history, you're going to have 6 or 8 teachers, and you're going to have to pay them a good salary, and you're talking a lot of money. But in the AC program, we had two people who had degrees in education, and they were at the head of the school under me as the pastor, and even I had some education classes and the things that they needed. But I didn't want to be bogged down with school. I wanted to pastor the church. So I got 2 people under me that were trained, and the rest of the workers in the school were parents. And the curriculum was written, if you teach a child to read, then when they once start to read, you put them into the workbooks and the curriculum. They read it, they take a test on it, and then they take another test, and as they work their way up, and if they don't make 80%, they don't go forward. They don't get to go on and graduate unless they make 80% all the way up. And it works better. Also, they're taught phonics for reading, which is the only way to read, in my opinion. Yeah. And so we had a program where if you were a member of the church and you tithed to the church, your children could go to the school free, and we didn't have any trouble paying the bills. And I think that's to me, that's the best thing for small churches that want to have a Christian school. But anyway, the law got changed. Ronald Reagan finally put the heat on them and told them that they either had to solve the problem or he was going to start an investigation and hold up their public funds for 3 years. And they couldn't operate their schools without the public funds of dollars coming from Washington, D.C. So
that got their attention.
Yeah, got it fixed. And so in 1986 is when I left there. I left the church, and the school was still operating, and all of the students that we graduated, I think all of them went to college. All of them went to Bible college. And some of them worked in ministries, some of them pastored, some of them went to other places, and some wound up with their own business. I think about one young man who he had a very high IQ, and his parents and his grandparents came to our church, but he was in the public school because they didn't think I guess they didn't want to tithe. I'm not sure what the reason was, but he got expelled from the public school for disciplinary reasons. And his grandmother came to me and said, is there any way you would consider him in your school? And I said, well, there might possibly be, but I said, we don't normally take discipline problems. She said, well, the problem is he's so smart, he's ahead of them, and he's bored. He's bored to death. He's a junior in high school. So I said, well, the first place to start is to test him. So we tested him. And he already, even at that level, he tested out at the first year of college level.
Oh, wow.
In his learning. And I talked to the young man, and I talked to his parents, and I let them know, we're going to try it, but the first time, if you cause a problem, well, the truth was he didn't cause any problems. He was really a good student. And he went 2 years, graduated from high school, and his last test, he was in his second year of college, and we were able to take care of him with the same program through the first year of college with a accredited school of college. And so it worked well for him. And I don't know, from there, I wound up just preaching around and starting churches. I started 4 Baptist churches. I rebuilt a couple of them, but had fallen down. One church not far from here had 8 women. That's all they had left. Building a parsonage, they had a cemetery, they had everything, but they didn't have people. And they wanted me to pastor. And I said, well, you don't know me, and I don't know you, and all that well. So it was Sunday before Thanksgiving. I said, I'll preach until later, and if the Lord blesses and you want to keep me, we'll stay. If not, I'll leave. Mm-hmm. So we started with 8 women, and on Easter Sunday we had 96 people, and we had baptized 26 new converts.
Oh, wow.
And they wanted me to stay, and I would have loved to have stayed, but we found out during that time that the woman who was acting as treasurer every office was filled by a woman. And I said, we've got to have some men, and she was against that. So she was going to start out a campaign to get rid of me. So I said, hey, I don't want you to fight each other. I'll just leave. You can have it. The next thing we know, the parsonage burns, and she gets the insurance. You know, it's a crazy thing what happens in people's lives. It's crazy.
Well, Pastor Ramsey, when you got arrested, how did they arrest you, and how long were you in jail?
Well, they arrested me several times because, as I said, it was a
ongoing thing.
It was an ongoing situation where if the school didn't run, I wasn't supposed to be in jail and so forth. Mm-hmm. But the first time they arrested me, we had when Pastor McCurry from Georgia and Pastor Dixon from Indiana learned about it, they came out and they started calling preachers and getting ready for what was going to be an arrest, and they were going to padlock the church too. And so there were about 3,000 preachers in this little town of 1,000, and they were all in the building, out in the yard, out in the street. I mean, we could seat 300 people maybe in this auditorium, and we had 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever. And so the sheriff came in through the front door, through the crowd of preachers, and started calling my name and all that kind of thing. Went down through the basement all the way up through the back stairs, and he opened the door, came in the auditorium, and stopped and looked at me, and I had children. We were having chapel. And I said, is there something I can do for you, Sheriff? He said, I'm here to arrest you and take you to jail. And I said, well, I'm not going to resist you. And so he came up to the pulpit and put the cuffs on, take me out the door, and put me in the police car and took me to the jail. And of course, that was an experience for me in jail. Never been in jail. And it's a rural area, so we didn't have a lot of drug addicts and that kind of thing in the jail, but we just had a lot of people who were not well educated, and they'd been in trouble. One young man was brought in for 60 days. I asked him, what are you in here for? He said, cattle rustling. I said, you're kidding. No, he said, I'm in for cattle rustling. I said, well, how many cattle did you rustle? He said, well, I only took one. And I said, how did that happen? He said, well, when I graduated from high school, I wanted to throw a party for my buddies. And just from our local there, not far from our church and not far from the jail, there's a large company called Foxley's that feeds cattle. And they probably had 2,000 head of cattle in the feedlots. and he just backed his truck up over there, took the gun and shot her and drug her across the fence and put her in the back of the truck and slit her throat and took her home. They followed the blood trail mainly. I said, well, are you having to pay for the cow? No, don't have to pay. I said, well, what do you do with the extra meat? Oh, it's in my freezer. You didn't give that up? No, we're going to keep that too. I said, wow, you got a good deal, didn't you?
Yeah, what about the farmer?
Yeah, the farmer, he didn't get anything. And not only did he not get anything, he had to pay taxes to feed the guy for 60 days, take care of his medical needs, everything else. There's no true justice in that system.
No.
And, but the biggest problem that I had in jail, and I was in jail I was arrested about 4 times, and I was in jail a total of about 90 days because it was in and out, and so forth. And when I first went into jail, it was a new experience. I was anxious a little bit. I'd prayed a lot, turned it over to the Lord. And the only thing that I had trouble with is these guys would stay up half the night or into 3 o'clock in the morning, and they played rock music and all of that. And so I had trouble sleeping. And so I prayed. I did a lot of praying, and I read the Bible through 3 or 4 times while I was in there. And a lot of things, that's where I heard the first message about, I was sent a tract about the Christian Israel message. Of course, I was like a typical pastor. I rejected it at first. That's another story I'll tell you. Actually, Brother Barley's father-in-law sent me the little booklet on our heritage. Yes, Sheldon Emery. And I threw it under my cot. And the next day, though, somebody else sent me the same booklet. And I looked at it, but I put it under there. And the next day, I got another one exactly like it. I mean, 3 days in a row. What are the chances? I said, this is not happenstance. God's got something here He wants me to look at. So that's when I began to really study the issue and look at it seriously. And of course, I came to the truth. But the thing about the rock music, I prayed about that, and we couldn't have any sweets in the jail. You couldn't have sugar. That sets off everybody hyper. And but you could have fruit, and you could have almonds or nuts, thing like that. So I asked my wife and my associate pastor who came to see me every day. I said, bring some fruit. And so they brought over, I told them to bring about a half a bushel of fruit. They had some apples and bananas, and I don't know what all we had in there, and some nuts. And when they came in, of course, everybody in the jail is looking at this big box of stuff coming in, and I set it down and got me a banana out of it and started eating and kicked the thing under my cot. And I did all this on purpose. And the guy that was sort of what we call the boss, I was always a boss in there when you get in there, somebody who's running things. And he says, can we have some of that? I said, there is a way you can have some of this. He said, well, what do we got to do? He said, all I want you to do is at 10 o'clock at night, I want you to turn off your rock music so I can sleep. And he said, okay, heads up, everybody, get your earphones out, and at 10 o'clock you put them on. I don't want to hear any rock music off the, that's open. And I ended that. It was good after that. And I had a good rapport with the guys. One young man was in there, and he came to me crying. He was about 18 years old. And he said, well, Pastor, he said, I can't read. I said, did you go to school? Yeah, I graduated from, and he told me the school. And I said, you can't read. No, I can't read, and I can't write. And he said, I need to write my mother and tell her where I am. And he said, would you help me write a letter? And I did. I helped him write a letter. And about the third time I came into jail, he was back in there again. And he came to me and said, you know, I think I need to become a Christian to get my life straightened out. And I said, well, I would recommend that. And so I went through all the things. First of all, D.L. Moody one time said, if you can't get it, or no, it was Spurgeon maybe, I'm not sure, said if you can't get a man lost, you probably can't get him saved. So I thought, well, I better get this guy to know what his sins are. And I said, well, I want to know about your lifestyle. I said, you drink? Yeah. Do you take drugs? Sometimes. And I said, you go to the bars? Yeah. Are you laying around with the women? Yeah. You know, and I said, you got to stop all that. None of that's going to be acceptable. The Lord don't want you in that condition. I said, he'll fix you. He'll help you get rid of it, but you got to be willing to. And so he really, at that point, he wasn't sure. He said, well, let me think about it. And about 2 days later, he came back and he said, there's no other way. If I don't do this, I'm not going to have a life. And so we had prayer, and he got to know the Lord, and he got free and got released, and he never did come back as far as I know.
So well, maybe the Lord put you in prison just so you could talk to him.
That might be. You never know. That's for sure. You never know. And, of course, the jail was in kind of a sloppy mess. It wasn't well taken care of. And the prisoners all came and said, well, we don't write very well and don't know how to write a professional letter. We want to write somebody, the sheriff or somebody, and tell them what all needs to be fixed in here. And I said, well, first of all, you don't write the sheriff. The sheriff works for the county commissioners. You write the commissioners. And he said, okay, well, would you do that? They sat down, and I said, okay, what do you want fixed? The shower had a tin bucket with a handle on it. It was hung over the pipe, and it had holes in the bottom, and that was the shower. And they said, we ought to have a shower head. And the stool didn't have a lid for it. And they wanted that, and they wanted some painting done, and they wanted some sweeping done, and they wanted, just little things. And we sent the letter out. Well, the sheriff had to send it. He couldn't. He read it, of course, when it went out. I'm sure it was upsetting to him, but he had to send it out, and he couldn't not do it.
Yeah.
And the day after he sent it, before the commissioners ever got it, he came in and said, okay, guys, straighten up. We're going to fix up some things today. The thing that was in there. It was interesting to see how things work. And the sheriff was not a Christian. He played dobro every Saturday night at the bar, local bar, and he'd come in drunk on Sunday morning sometimes to serve breakfast and a lot of things. The food wasn't very good at first. And when I went around the country, I told stories about every morning we had cornflakes. That's what we had. That was nothing else. Never had anything but cornflakes. And some of them wouldn't eat anything. Then when the lunch came along, they'd have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and they'd devour those. And then on night they had bologna sandwiches, but they weren't like anything I was used to from the South. I don't know how you were raised, but when I was a kid, I was raised, we'd have 2 pieces of bread with mayonnaise on it, and a slice of bologna, and a slice of cheese, and a slice of lettuce, and that was our bologna sandwich. But in there, you had one piece of bologna, no cheese, no lettuce, no mayonnaise, but butter on the bread. Well, they didn't like that, so they would take them apart, and they'd take the butter side and stick it on the ceiling. So it was just.
As a protest.
Was another thing on that list. That was another thing on the list. We knew the sheriff was getting paid. He was getting paid $5 a meal per prisoner to bring us the food. He would go to the local pantries and get all the free stuff he could, but that's what he gave us. And but whenever they got taken to the commissioners, they finally took it away from him and went down to the local restaurant, got them to bid on it. And then every morning we had scrambled eggs, and we had toast, and we had had a decent breakfast, and the other meals were better. So maybe God put me in there to straighten up some of that too. Who knows?
Yeah, because that's bologna sandwiches, peanut butter, and cornflakes for 90 days. Yeah. That'd be pretty rough.
Yeah, that's not real good.
No, not real good at all.
Yeah. That's why they wanted some of that fruit I was bringing in anyway. But anyway, the law was changed in '84, and the thing is, and this is what I would say, if your people who are listening, and you may have listeners in Nebraska, I don't know. I have people in Nebraska on my mailing list, but when we left there, the church was free. The church could have any school it wanted, and there wasn't any reprimand, there wasn't any feedback or anything. But they still left the hook in the parent, and the hook was that if you send your kids, you can send your kids anywhere you want them to go. But if they're outside of the state system, you have to fill out a form and tell them the name of the child, the age, the grade level, and where they go to school. And every parent said, well, I don't have a problem with that. And I said, well, I don't to an extent, but I said, anytime the state leaves the door open, they're going to walk through it many more times and add to it. And that's what's happened over the years, is they have, each year they would add a little bit more questioning, a little more restraint, a little more of this and that. And today the parents can still send their kids to a church school that's not licensed, but they're requiring the students to take courses and subjects that those schools probably, I know we would not have taught them, and therefore therefore the parent has to say, well, I can't send them here because they don't provide this curriculum, they don't provide this material, and so really they brought the parents back almost. Not quite, but almost as entailed and enslaved as they were when we started. It's sad to say, but that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the school system today, it's made to indoctrinate. It's made to, like you said, make communist. And it's worse now than it was back in, I'm 79, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. It was bad then, but in fact, I tell everybody, when I graduated from high school in 1957, my social studies book had things like, we have to supply Social Security, we have to supply welfare, we have to do all. That's socialism and communism being taught right then. And that was being taught when I went to school.
Yeah.
So it isn't any better. It's a lot worse. Now you got to deal with the woke system. People think they're cats instead of people. We got a school here in Missouri that one of the students thinks she's a cat, so they have to provide a litter box in the restroom for her to go to the bathroom. You know.
Oh my!
It's great. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up.
No, and parents put up with this stuff. I don't understand parents. I'm going to say something that I'm sure your people are going to flare up about, and but they won't get mad at you. They'll get mad at me, and that's okay. Parents who send their kids to public schools are not a whole lot better than the parents who used to take their babies down to Baal and have them sacrificed, because they're sacrificing their children to the state. And I don't know about you, but I know many parents come to me and say, I taught my children right. I took them to church, took them to Sunday school, and when they got to be 13 or 14, they just went the wrong way, and they've never straightened out since, and they don't live for the Lord. And I always say, well, did you have them in the public school? Well, yeah, we did. I said, well, there's your problem. Plus, add to that rock music, and all the other music. So the parents don't realize they're trying to protect their income so they can live a little better and have the things they think they want. But the truth is, when you get in on the other side in the kingdom, the only thing you can take from this life is your children. There's nothing else you can take. So you're going to give up the only thing you can have in eternity with you from this life for things now that you can't have then. I don't understand that philosophy at all.
I agree with everything you said, including the bit about the parents taking their children to public school is not much better than sacrificing them to Baal, because they're not sacrificing their physical bodies. Well, in some cases, maybe, but they're actually sacrificing their minds.
Oh, absolutely. Their mind, their morals, their soul, their everything. they're losing the whole person. So it's tragic, and I fight with the parent. I don't really fight with them, but a lot of people disagree with me, but I stand strong. I believe that until we get to the place where Christians are willing to create a generation of children who serve the Lord and don't serve the state and don't serve the devil, then we're not going to get it. I don't think we're going to have revival until that happens.
No, I agree. And, I've told you this before, and I've told other people before. Sometimes when I'm talking about homeschooling with parents and how they need to take a part in their children's education, I'll ask them, I said, would you let the U.S. government manage your finances for 1 month? And, of course, the response is, oh, no, absolutely not, And then I'd ask them, I said, then why are you letting your children, the U.S. government, manage your children's education from 5 years old to 18? And then you send them off to government college, basically, secular college. And I'm like, why do you do that?
Yeah. Well, they're not thinking. That's it. And somehow or another, they're not putting themselves in the right churches where they hear the right truth. Mm-hmm. And the churches are failing. The churches are failing badly because I know that my wife and I visited around at different churches, not that we're hungry for any of their output, but we want to know what we're dealing with in the community. Yeah. And we went to the First Baptist Church here in town 2 or 3 times, and one Sunday they were giving out awards and accolades to the public school teachers. And then we went back another time, and they were putting the football team on the platform and giving them accolades because they won the championship. And I thought, what in the world is wrong with this church? These are not the people that these people are not going to be the heroes in the kingdom. They're not going to be the people we look up to. So why aren't they? At least they ought to consider giving accolades to the people who are spiritual, who pray and are faithful and tithe and stay with the church and make things work. But no, that's not what they're doing.
No, they're praising the secular communists that are brainwashing their children.
Absolutely they are. And there are lots of things going on right now, and I won't get into them, but there is at least a little ray of hope in some of our hearts that there's going to be some changes soon, and we hope they're for the better. But my concern is that even if we have things change, even if we went back to a constitutional form of government, a true constitutional form of government than what we have, if we did that today, God's people are so wildly living in sin and wicked and unfaithful to the truth that I don't know if we could keep it. I think we'd be right back in the same problem again.
We need a foundation, a biblical foundation, and that's our problem. We are not set up for that. Our minds are so in the gutter that we don't even value the education of our children anymore. We just cast that away to the lowest bidder, basically.
Yeah, if the Christian people, if Christian people are going to vote for non-Christian people and people who are promoting abortion and promoting woke and promoting who knows what else, all these programs, we can't have a government that is godly as long as Christians keep putting people in. I mean, we had a lady here next to us several years ago. She died not too long ago, but I asked her on election day or before the election day, and back several years ago when Mr. Obama ran for president, I asked her who she was going to vote for, and she said she was going to vote for Mr. Obama. And I said, oh, my, why? Well, they say the Republicans are going to take away our Social Security. I said, oh, in other words, you're willing to sell out everything you believe in for your Social Security. Didn't make her happy. She told her son not to sell me any land. When
Obama was running, I lived in Eastern Kentucky, and a lot of the Eastern Kentucky folks there, and they're poor white people. They ran out in droves and voted for Obama because a lot of them were on welfare or some kind of government assistance, and they figured that the Democratic point of view was going to basically get them more stuff, more money, more stuff from the government.
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly. They've said, Obama and Biden have all said they want every single American on the welfare. They want us totally controlled by the government as to what we buy and eat and live and die. Terrible.
Yeah, anyway. It is. Well, Pastor Ramsey, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we close out here in a minute?
Well, the only thing that I would ask the people who are truly Christians and really are concerned about where we are and what's happening, I would ask them, number one, to be faithful. Be faithful to the Word of God. Be faithful to their church if it's doing the right things. If it's not, a lot of people tell me, well, we don't have a Christian Israel congregation close to us. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's important, and I think it is, then I've always said, even when I was a Baptist, if you don't have a church that's close to you that teaches the truth, then you need to move. You need to go where the church is, wherever it is. And I would say that. Be faithful and true, and stay on your knees and keep praying and keep financially supporting. The tithe is the Lord's anyway. So if you're using the tithe for yourself, you're robbing God if you're doing that. So you need to make sure that your tithe gets to the people who are preaching the truth and doing the right work. And, you're doing a good job, so hopefully people will stand behind you.
Well, I appreciate it, Pastor. Yeah, those out there, if they can take anything away from this conversation, if you're a parent and you have children, is if your children are in public school or if they're in a situation where they're being educated and brainwashed by people that do not hold your values, you need to rethink the situation, whether it be a good Christian school, whether it be homeschooling, something. A lot of people think they can't do it, but you can make some sacrifices in your life somewhere to make it happen.
Well, actually, parents who have not been totally indoctrinated in the college level make better teachers than those who have.
Yeah.
And I don't know what curriculum you use, but I know that the ACE program is specifically designed for homeschools, and it's very easy to use. So if they're worried about, well, I don't know that much chemistry, and you don't have to know that. It's in the book, and if they read it. So that will teach them. I don't know where we got this idea. We got to have somebody stand up in front of a student and tell them all that they need to know. That's never been a real good way. I remember when I was in college one time, I had a professor. We were studying philosophy or something, and he made fun of Christians. And he said, well, they're all going to be shocked when we finally get to see God, and he might be a buzzard. I'm going, what? I can't believe this. And I didn't go to that school anymore. I didn't go back to that school. I couldn't. So
today
right. I hope
we have more tools at our disposal now than ever when it comes to education. If you don't know something, you can learn it very quickly.
Yes, and the thing is, don't be silent. Write Brother Dyer and ask him, what do you recommend for a curriculum or what? So we've been through it. We have the experience. At least ask us. You may not agree with us. You may go with a different system, but the program is to get your kids where they're taught the way in life of God rather than the way in life of communism and socialism and greed. So at least ask somebody that has been runs a school. Most of our pastoral leaders have had a school at one time or another, and I know the pastors that I know have had schools, and they can tell you what they found out.
Indeed. Well, Pastor Ramsey, thank you for coming on the program and talking to us about your story and talking about this subject, very important subject of education. Before we close out, where can people write to you and find your information? I know you got some books also. How can they get a hold of you?
Well, I do have a website. It's actually my name, Everett Ramsey, and I'm not doing this as a boast. Some people think it is. I have Everett Ramsey DD, but Everett Ramsey had already been taken by somebody else, so I had to put something at the end to get the title. EverettRamseyDD.com. If you type that into Google, it'll take you there. And also, if they want to write me, they can just write to Everett Ramsey, P.O. Box 18, Houston, Missouri, 65483. So that's very simple things. They can do that.
And you're also on YouTube as well under Everett Ramsey too, yes. Correct?
Under Pastor Ramsey, I've actually got 3 channels. I didn't intend it that way. They divided it up. There's one on conferences with Pastor Ramsey, and then there's Pastor Ramsey, and then there's Everett Ramsey, I think, or something. But if you go in and look, you'll find them. And we have services once a month here, and we post those on YouTube, and that I don't have much information on there, and I don't really. I didn't set it up so people can make comments because that's how they get you kicked off. People make comments that are bad, so I just left it open. But yeah, and I have some of the videos on my own website, and I'm hoping to get to the place where I can put all of them on there at some point.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. People can go there to your website and check your stuff out, check your books out. And I appreciate you coming on, and thank you for all those out there listening. You've been listening to Christian America Ministries Worldwide. You can go to our website, christianamericaministries.org, and if you would like to find out more information about our program, and if you're listening to us on Shortwave Radio, we would love for you to send us in a reception report through the website, through our contact page, and let us know how and where you're listening. And if you are listening on Shortwave, let us know what your address is, and we'll send you a free booklet, Is Jesus God or a God, which is something I wrote a while back, which is a scriptural defense of the deity of Christ, just as a thank you for taking the time to send that in. So thank you all for listening to Christian America Ministries. Come back next week for another broadcast.
Have you ever read a verse in your Bible that made you feel uncomfortable? Have you ever run across things in God's Word and thought,
well, that wasn't very politically correct?
Have you ever thought to yourself,
no, I don't want that there. I wish I could just rip it out.
Well, wait no longer. The new Me, Myself, and I Bible has you covered. Find a verse you don't like? Don't worry about it. Just use the patented Me, Myself, and I Bible pen and eraser. Erase the passage in question, and then write in your own humanist revelation. It's simple as that. For example, Leviticus 18:22. That's a really uncomfortable passage.
Thou shalt not lie with mankind, as with womankind. It is abomination.
Ew. Hateful. No problem. Just pen in,
you may lie with a male as with a woman. It's just another lifestyle.
See? That wasn't so hard. Now, let's say you're reading the Gospels in John chapter 2, where Jesus goes and braids a whip and beats the Jewish moneylenders out of the temple. Now, that doesn't really fit the 65-pound hippie love child Jesus you learned about in Sunday school. No problem. Just erase it. It's that easy. Listen to these testimonials from thrilled customers.
My Bible was full of things I knew the God I worshipped would never say. It was a lot of work to skip over all those problematic passages, and when I read my Bible, I just couldn't find the affirmation I was looking for. But thanks to the Me, Myself, and I Bible, not only can I read the Bible from cover to cover and feel good about myself, but now I can do it in 30 minutes flat.
I love my Me, Myself, and I Bible. Whenever someone tries to challenge me with scripture I don't like, I can honestly say, that is not in my Bible.
Yeah, but how do you deal with Deuteronomy 4:2, where it says not to add or take away from the Word of God?
That's not in my Bible.
But wait, there's more! If you order your first Me, Myself, and I Bible within the next 66 minutes, you will receive a second Me, Myself, and I Bible for free to give to your local pastor. Just call 1-800-PHARISEE and set up your 66 easy payments of $166.66. Call now, because the truth doesn't set you free.
Hello? Well, guess who called me the other day? A TV reporter from down in L.A. He said he heard a song a little while ago on some obscure talk radio show. Then he asked if I was the writer of the music I just mentioned in the lyrics above. But now that I look back at the wisdom I lacked, I probably never should have said too much. And as he pressured me to share with him a word or two, and we carried on our telephonic interview, a wee still voice inside my head was saying, "You're gonna be sorry for every word you just said." Then sure enough, right after he was through, he slandered and defamed me on the evening news. I should have listened instead to the voice inside my head, 'cause here's what it said to me. You don't go casting your pearls before swine, 'cause they're only gonna trample them into the muck and grime. And when they're through, they'll turn on you and burn you every time. So don't go casting your pearls before swine. And when I went off to sing a song in Washington, I was hounded by those dirty dogs at CNN, who said they wanted to do a favor for me by giving me a little free publicity. I should have never let them turn their lying cameras on, 'cause when the cutting and the editing was finally done, they put horns on my head by changing everything I said. They made me sound like the devil's own son. So you don't go casting your pearls before swine, 'cause they're only gonna trample them into the muck and grime. And when they're through, they'll turn on you and smear you every time. So don't go casting your pearls before swine. Now there's ABC, and then there's NBC, and CBS, and CNN, the New York Times, the LA Times, and the Washington Post are just a few of the most porkiest people. NBC called to let me know they were gonna use the music on a TV show. They were gonna use the song I wrote about the wrong that happened up in Ruby Ridge, Idaho. But then they got a threatening letter from the ADL that said, "You use that kind of music, we'll make your life hell." Then they dropped me off the show, and now I think I know why the music doesn't sell that well. So you don't go casting your pearls before swine, 'cause they're only gonna trample them into the muck and grime. And when they're through, they'll turn on you and rip you every time. So don't go casting your pearls before swine. No, you don't go casting your pearls before swine. I said you don't go casting your pearls to them sanctimonious media boys and girls. You don't go casting your pearls before swine.
Thank you for listening to Christian America Ministries. If you are blessed by this outreach ministry, please consider going to www.christianamericaministries.org to our contact page and donating to our radio ministry to help keep this program on the air. We appreciate your support.
You have been listening to Christian America Ministries Worldwide. Come back next week on Shortwave Radio or on the internet for our next broadcast. To learn more about Christian America Ministries, visit our website, christianamericaministries.org. Thank you for listening.